Right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to GeoChat. It is our new podcast for the Department of Geosciences. My name is Rose McGrory. I am your host, and I'm the person behind much of the social media content in the department now. So you can put a name to a face if you've been following on socials, and if you haven't, please do. This is a chance for us to introduce our faculty and students and graduate students and recent alumni and bring to light the work that they have been doing, the research that they have recently published. So what I'll be doing is I will be sitting down and having interviews with our recent authors, and we will talk about their research. I'll ask them some questions, and you can follow this along on YouTube. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments, and I will try to get them answered for you. So this is our very first podcast. I'm very excited about this. And I'm here with Dr. Faisal Adams. Faisal got his PhD in May, so I'm super excited that he was able to come and do this interview with me. Faisal is an international student from West Africa, and so I've been very happy to get to know him and to learn a bit more about where he's from. And that's one of the cool things about our department is that we have a great mix of American and international students. And so we get to learn a lot about each other's cultures and where we're from as we progress as grad students. So Faisal, is there anything you'd like to say about
Uh,
yourself?
no, thank you for the introduction. Yes, I did come all the way from Ghana. It was quite a journey. I'm happy to have been here, to come here, meet so many great people, learn a lot, and yeah, I'm happy to be here to talk more about what I've done in the past.
Great.
Thank you.
And Faisal has been working with Dr. Mark Michel. So I'm actually going to use that to say, Faisal, why don't you go ahead and tell us about the paper that you recently published? And that paper will be linked in the description of this video.
Yeah, awesome. So the paper was about nanotubes. We call them immobile nanotubes, and they are actually clays. So if you are familiar with any sort of clays, you'll know how cool they are. They can do many unique things. Immobile nanotubes are a type of clay, except they're tubular. And that means that they have what we call surface area, makes them really reactive. It means they can do a lot of things. You can use them to clean up water. You can maybe even tune their properties and put them in a film and make the film really strong. So a wide range of applications and a wide range of natural implications. So uh, it's important because it exists in nature, but also you can make a synthetic version and then use that synthetic version to make other cool things. And so we were trying to understand the things that affect its formation in the lab, but that you could maybe extrapolate, extend to what happens in nature.
Awesome. So you have more to say? I was
Yeah.
going to ask about your methods.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the methods, it involved a lot of synthesis, which means we went into the lab and mixed a bunch of chemicals. Like I said, it's an aluminum silicate, a clay, but it's made up of aluminum and silicon. They are some of the most abundant elements on the planet. So they're not exactly harmful. It's what you would find in dirt around you. That's one reason we wanted to work on this particles because it's sustainable. Um, we did a lot of synthesis, a lot of chemical mixing, and then we did what we call characterization, which is a way of identifying what you have using X-rays. That was one of the cool methods we used. And what we found is that these nanotubes, they form with other things that have different structures and different shapes that may or may not be desired, depending on who wants these things. So we used our synthesis and some statistics to try to find a relationship between what are the synthesis conditions and what are the resulting phases, which is do you make a lot of nanotubes or not?
And so what were your results from that?
We found some results that were very in line in with what you'd find in the literature with what other people have published, but we were also able to extrapolate our methods. So in the past, when people use these methods, they fix one thing, let's say concentration of their chemicals that are going into the system. They fix that and then they change one other parameter. We were changing all the conditions at the same time. So we have a wider, more comprehensive idea of how everything affects the formation of these nanotubes. So you can make them now in many different ways instead of trying to narrow down how you used to make them in the past.
Awesome. So what would be some of the advantages of making them in many different ways?
Well, yeah, for example, if you were trying to scale up your synthesis, so I did mention concentration, if you wanted to make a relatively higher concentration of these nanotubes, and spoiler alert, we do have a paper coming up that kind of tackles that question. If you're trying to make a higher concentration in the past, you would make other unwanted things like proto-immogolites, which is it's very similar to immogolite nanotubes, but it's not the same thing. Um, Now we have a better idea of how you minimize the formation of other undesirables while you're trying to make your nanotubes. So we think it's a strong method. We think also the methodology or the methods used in the study are you can extend them to other systems. Right now we use them for immogolite, but there's no reason you couldn't use them for almost any chemical material, geochemical system out there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So that actually kind of leads me into one of my questions for you, which is what are the strengths of the study? What about the study should make us say, wow, this is a great study. This is very well done. This is something that we can trust as the public.
I think one thing we did in the paper, and if you look at the paper and you look at the supplementary materials, something that we've been trying to do in our research group is we put all of the data out there. And if you look at the supplemental information for this paper, you'll find, I want to say 20 or 30 pages of some of my raw data, just all listed out there, trying to be as transparent as we could. There's obviously the peer review process where the experts to go through the paper, they critique it, um, they give it back to us, and then we address any concerns they have. And we did go through that process. So actually, I think it's pretty trustworthy.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for going through that because I don't know if all of our audience members are familiar with the peer review process, and maybe that's something I'll touch on more a little more in a future episode. But I was also wondering, what about your study in particular? So not just the peer review process, but what did you do in the lab? What was something about your study that that makes you say, "Wow, this is a great study. This is groundbreaking. This is something that will change future of nanoparticle science and geoscience as a whole." What about the study will move us forward?
Um, that's a great question. I think one of the strengths of the study is how it merges different disciplines together. So, like I said, we used a lot of statistical methods, and that's just leaning into the general trend of where things are going, where you're trying to learn as much as you can from any data you get. And so I think one of the main strengths of the study is it serves as a novel, as a kind of like a framework, if you will, for doing things in other systems. Nanoparticles are very small and they're usually very hard to characterize. And we show that you can use relatively accessible X-ray based methods to show different proportions, different quantities of nanoparticles in any sample you have, which in the past you needed to use billion-dollar machines for. But in this project, we used our benchtop uh, X-ray machine that has been running in our hallways for like 30 years, and it worked. It worked really well.
That's awesome. So definitely accessibility of being able to reproduce the study is
Yes, it's
very strong.
very simple.
And so this is maybe not as much fun a question, but what are the limitations of the study? What are some things that you were limited by, or what are some things that could have gone better as you did this study?
Yeah, that's a great question. And definitely one of the limitations of the system is, like I said, the experimental side of things. Synthesizing and characterizing not the samples took a lot of effort. It takes about maybe 2 weeks for a complete synthesis for a singular sample. And I did maybe 150 different syntheses for this work. So that was taxing. Moving forward, we are trying to incorporate optimized methods, which again, future study looks at how you can reduce that load of experimental work, just optimize how you sample your synthesis space, but also look to the literature, try to learn data wise from what other people have done, and then combine that.
That's awesome. So I was also wondering, was there anything that you were unable to do in this particular study, but you wish you had been able to do?
Mm. This particular study was very, I'd say, very comprehensive. We tackled a lot of things. I'd say we didn't one result that we didn't get in that study, but again, we tried to deal with it later on was we were hoping to see using just the pure chemistry a way of increasing your nanotube yield as a function of concentration. So a way where you could increase the concentration of your reagents and then produce a lot of nanotubes. We didn't quite see that, but it's a work in progress.
Awesome. So that's something you're still working on,
Yeah.
or that your lab group is still working on.
Well, while I was finishing up my PhD, yes,
Okay.
there's still some stuff that needs to get out. Yes.
Awesome. That's great. And so that's my last question. I think that actually leads very well into it. What is the logical next step for this research? And this might be something that you're planning on doing, or this might be something that an incoming student would say, wow, this is something I want to pick up and continue on from this point. So just in general for the community, what would be the logical next step for research moving forward from the paper that you published?
So, if you have the chance and you're watching this video, I want you to look up carbon nanotubes. They're really cool nanotubes, but they have certain limitations. And some of these limitations, you can address them using these immobile nanotubes. But one thing holding back the kind of widespread use of these nanotubes is scalability. I've mentioned this a few times, but basically it's very hard to make a lot of the nanotubes. A lot of my syntheses involved making them at very low concentrations because that's when you maximize their purity and how much of them you can make. So I think we set a very strong foundation for addressing this approach. This paper in particular shows how you can minimize the formation of impurities. So kind of the next logical step is how do you then maximize the yield or the amount of the nanotubes? And I think that's a great question that someone could probably ask and answer.
If you can send me some links about carbon nanotubes, I'd be happy to put those in the description as well, just as supplemental for any of our readers who are interested in those. So those are all the questions I have. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, address, or anything that you want to say to our audience?
Well, come to Virginia Tech,
Yes,
join the Department
definitely.
of Geosciences. Probably, maybe I'm biased. I'd say it's probably the best department at Tech, which is again a great university. We have an awesome campus. Um, and I worked on these really cool nanotubes, and I'm even moving on to work on battery materials. So I'd say it also opens a lot of avenues for future work. So yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome to get a degree in geosciences and move on to work on synthesizing materials for batteries. So that's pretty awesome that you've moved in that direction.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of what you learn in the geosciences is relevant to fields from engineering to medicine to what have you. It's very I'd say it's very widespread in terms of where you can end up and what you can do with it.
Nice. So I have one more question actually, and it's not about your work, but this is just kind of a personal question. If we have someone in our audience who is a middle or high school student, or maybe already in college, but is thinking about majoring in geoscience, what would your advice be for them?
Hmm, that's a great question. I would say you could just read up on maybe what specific subfield of geosciences you find interesting. If you go to the Virginia Tech Geosciences website, you'll see that we have certain subfields laid out, concentrations. Obviously, you don't have to make a decision now, but
Mhm.
if you find something that interests you, I'd look more into it. You could reach out to us at the departments. You could reach out to a professor if you find your work very interesting. We have a lot of great people out here. They're more than happy to usually to interact with students and tell them more and help them figure out where they can go.
And you're always welcome to reach out to us on social media. You'll be guaranteed to get me. And if I need to put you in touch with somebody, talk to me, message me, we'll talk about it. And I'll see how I can help you because we're always trying to encourage people to learn more about our field and to realize that there are some great opportunities if you're interested in studying geosciences. So that's all we have for today. But thank you, Dr. Adams, so much for being here and for doing this podcast with us. And I'm so excited that you were able to be our inaugural guest on GeoChat. So
Thank
thanks,
you.
everybody,
Thank you.
and keep an eye out for our next episode.